Call the City Council meeting to order. At this time, if you're able, please stand for our national anthem.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
At this time, if I could call on Councillor Bruno for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Worship. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandrock, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwa, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. This evening, Councillor Danch and Councillor Elliott will not be attending, as well as Regional Councillor Davies. We have one proclamation this evening. If I could have Councillors Bodner and Hoyle move the proclamation request and an invitation to participate in Autism Ontario's Fly the Flag campaign on April the 2nd, 2024, in celebration of World Autism Awareness Day. Any questions, Council? All in favor? That's carried. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Bagu move the agenda. Are there any changes or questions on the agenda? All in favor? That's carried. I do not have any disclosures of interest, confirming nobody has any. None have been submitted, so thank you, Council. We have two sets of minutes. If I can ask Councillors Beauregard and Aquilina to move regular meeting of Council March 12th, 2024, and a special meeting of Council March 19th, 2024. Questions on either set of meetings? Minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Staff reports, Council. The ones that are being pulled this evening are 8.5, 9.2, and 9.8. Are there any others to be pulled? That includes correspondence. Okay, if I could have Councillors Hoyle and Bodner move the remaining items. All in favor? That's carried. Presentations. We have two this evening. Our first presentation, I'll call up Nancy Salvage and her team to give us a presentation from Port Colborne Fair Trade Committee.
Good evening. I don't actually need one. Good evening, Mayor Steele and councillors. It's our pleasure to be here this evening. I thought we'd just introduce ourselves, and then we're each going to be speaking for a couple minutes on fair trade. So I'm Nancy Salvage. Contrary to the agenda, I'm not the executive director. I love it. I'm going to frame it, but I'm one of the committee members. Pleased to be here.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kellen Spence, and I am a first-year member of the Fair Trade Town Committee, and I'm happy to be here.
Good evening. My name is Jane Nye, and I'm manager of Villages Port Colborne and a member of the Fair Trade Town Steering Committee.
Excellent. They let the new guys speak first, so that's good. It is a pleasure to be here this evening. My journey in fair trade started a long time ago as a teenager. I'm from Kitchener-Waterloo. Just outside of Kitchener-Waterloo in New Hamburg is where 10,000 Villages started. Villages is an original partner of that fair trade endeavor, which no longer exists, but Villages remains today in Port Colborne, and we should be very proud to still have that here. I had the privilege of attending the National Fair Trade Conference in Montreal last weekend. It was a wonderful time with a lot of passionate and enthusiastic fair trade people who work in that environment every day. And I came away from that thinking that we need to do more to advocate and to educate the public about fair trade and why it's important. I found a speech from a professor from York University who spoke about a chocolate bar that they have in their vending machine on campus, and it's fair trade certified. It retails for almost $8, and it's much more expensive than the other chocolate bars in the vending machine, but it's the third most popular selected out of about 40 items in that machine. So what they've learned is that because this is a student environment, but a lot of students are well educated now in what fair trade is and what it's all about, and they've made the choice to purchase fair trade chocolate when available. And what I hope we can do as a committee and continue to do as a fair trade town of Port Colborne is to advocate and continue to educate the public and offer fair trade choices to consumers, give them the choice to vote with their dollars for what they would like to choose, and I think we'll see some good change happen. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
So in 2009, Port Colborne became the first city in Ontario and the third city in Canada to become fair trade certified. We've joined over 2,000 cities in 27 countries around the world with this designation. Jane's going to be speaking a bit more as to what fair trade is, but I'm going to speak to our role here in Port Colborne. So the fair trade designation is awarded to communities that meet the 5 key requirements and complete annual recertifications of our designation. And this designation is dependent on demonstrating continued adherence to following these principles. So the requirements to be a fair trade city are 1, a steering committee composed of active community volunteers and leadership members that meet regularly. The second is that we have fair trade certified products available throughout the town relative to its population size. The third one is public awareness events that generate education for residents and engagement for local media. This has included fair trade presentations at schools, faith groups, as well as participation in city events like the Top Hat ceremony. We've been proud to serve our fair trade breakfast at the ceremony for the past decade. Community support from local businesses and schools is essential. And finally, with the certification requirement that involves you is that we need political support. Specifically, our City Hall continues to ensure our designation by committing to using a minimum of 2 fair trade products, like coffee, tea, and sugar, at all official gatherings within City Hall. We are also required to have a city councillor on our committee, and we're so pleased that Councillor Elliott, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, agreed and came on as a member of our committee for just starting in this year. So those are the requirements that we have maintained for 15 years in continuing to be a fair trade city. I'll turn it over to Jane now.
Well, some of this will be a little repetitive, but just over a week ago, I too attended the 9th National Canadian Fair Trade Conference in Montreal. We met up there, Callan and I. It was organized and run by Fair Trade Canada, the Canadian Fair Trade licensing body for products in Canada. There was a strong focus this time on coffee, cocoa, cashews, and bananas. The opening keynote address was given by Canadian Senator Julie Milleville-Deschênes, a human rights activist. Her private member bill, S-211, a law against forced labor and child labor in supply chains, just recently came into law in Canada on February the 1st. Her main point was that the supply chain coming to Canada is rife with forced labor. 90% of products come into Canada by shipping, as we know. Crews, for example, are too often forced to stay on ships for months with no collective bargaining agreements. We learned that during the early months of COVID, the first year probably, there was a lot of forced labor around the making of masks. Among many other speakers was another keynote speaker, Victor Cordero, an organic coffee producer who has dedicated more than 20 years of his life to improving the social and environmental dynamics of Santa Marta in the Sierra Nevada region of Colombia. He is a pioneer in organic and sustainable farming and founded a cooperative of more than 300 farmers that focus on organic, fair trade, and forest conservation. So these two speakers point to two main items in fair trade: human rights and land management in light of changing climate, and to produce a high quality product. The biggest takeaway overall for me from the conference is that there are incredibly passionate and fair trade advocates all across the nation that continue to work towards a better future for both producers and consumers. We will continue to spread the message of hope and fairness. This, on May 11th, 2024, is World Fair Trade Day, and we will be celebrating in town our 15-year success. So know that you will be getting an invitation to this celebration once we have all the plans in place. Mayor Steele and councillors, the future is fair. We are a fair trade town. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And as I asked her, we'll stay there because I'm sure there'll be a few questions, but as I asked you earlier, we now know that your hands and feet have warmed up since last Friday, which is a good thing. But I'll say it in my mayor's comments, but it was a great job by Fair Trade on Friday. Questions? I had Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. The first speaker got me to thinking about if that school did it. I don't know if it was a private school, a university, public or separate school, but I'm just wondering, is that something that a council or councils, like you have sort of the 3 school boards, is that something that we could support? Is it something that could fly? I mean, those are pre-college or university, but they, that's actually when you help instill things in people when they're young. And I didn't know, not a mandatory thing, but an optional product or two in those lunch-rooms and vending machines and all that. Has anybody thought of that may be a way forward in Ontario to do that, and whether it has to be done board by board or at a grander scale? But sounds like there's a good example of where it worked, and
Sure.
I don't know if that's something that we could camp onto.
Yeah, that's a great question. The school actually was York University, so it's a university campus, and there's many campuses that have a large fair trade initiative already. It's a great thing that they're doing. I met a couple individuals from the Winnipeg School Board, and they're trying to implement something school board wide there as far as a similar program. I believe there is fair trade schools. It doesn't have to be a campus, but elementary and high schools. So that is an option. It's something that I hadn't even thought of, but definitely it's come to mind now that we could look into it in Port Colborne for sure. Yeah.
In fact,
Just thinking that if we're a fair trade city and the council does that and same taxpayer and we collect it for school boards, why not have a fair trade, a couple options in schools that are in a municipality that's a fair trade municipality?
Fantastic idea.
well, Councillor Bruno, McKay Public School was designated a fair trade school for a number of years, but I think COVID threw a big monkey wrench into things, and I'm not sure that it's back on board. So that's something I need to check out. But yeah, they were selling fair trade bananas. They were making banana muffins out of fair trade bananas, and and making cookies with fair trade chocolate chips, stuff like that.
And going to other schools and promoting it. They were, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Baggett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you, Nancy, Colin, and Jane. A couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I went to the store, bought my chocolate bars I usually buy for the month, and come home, my wife gave me proper heck for buying certain brand chocolate bars because she says it was child labor picked or something, chocolate or something. And you're saying now the federal government's involved, is backing you up, like, for these major, I guess, violators. Who is actually going after these people? Like, you say our Canadian government backs your policies up, but who actually goes to bat for you, or for the children and child labor?
Well, it's organizations like ours. It is human rights activists that are trying to draw attention to the fact that in West Africa, child labor is a serious problem in the cocoa industry. The bill that this senator passed has to do with the supply chain, and I'm not exactly sure how that one is playing out. But I know that it is different human rights groups that is drawing attention to the fact that we need to change, and it is the fair trade world that's saying, look, regular chocolate bars are probably made by forced child labor. If you buy a fair trade chocolate bar and pay a little more, you know that it will be adult labor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate if you kept us up to date on what's going on rather than once every year or something.
Sure.
An email would be great to council through our clerk, and I would appreciate it myself. So, sure. Thank you.
We'd be happy to.
We'll be all over that.
Thanks, Councillor. Any further questions? All right. Thank you to our Fair Trade Committee. Appreciate it. Our next speaker for presentations is Ian Hamilton, President and CEO of the Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority. And no, the Hamilton isn't Ian's last name being named after a port. It's the city of Hamilton. Ian, welcome. Just press the red button there.
And do I advance the slides, or? Can if you like. Yeah, why don't I do that? Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. This is, I think the last time I was here was during COVID, so it's nice to actually be in the room and seeing everybody face to face. And sorry for our late arrival, but compliments to y'all. You run a much more efficient meeting than they do in Hamilton. They'd still be all finding their seats at this stage. So, anyways, as Mayor Steele mentioned, I'm Ian Hamilton, the CEO of the Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority, and we've just taken on some property here in Port Colborne. I wanted to give you all an update on what's going on, who we are as an organization. Some of you have heard all of it before, but for some of you it'll be new information. Okay. maybe I'm pointing it the wrong way. Anyways, so the Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority is really one of 17 different port authorities in the country. We're fundamentally managed over four pieces of legislation: the Canada Marine Act, our individual letters patent, and the management regulations. And we are there really to facilitate trade, and particularly with a focus on marine transportation and how we can do that. We're really a development agency. Is how we operate as opposed to a regulatory agency. And ultimately, if our assets if we ever dissolved, our assets would go up to Transport Canada, although officially the way it's structured, we're a non-share held capital corporation. The Hamilton-Oshawa Port Authority itself, which is probably 5 or maybe 6 in the country, depending on how you measure it, is operating as the name would suggest in Hamilton, Oshawa, and now we've entered into Niagara. We've got about 1,400 acres under our management, and that represents about 10 million metric tons of cargo per year, which has a value of about $4 billion. That includes 700 vessel calls. The vast majority are in Hamilton, with about 10%, or probably about 10% in Oshawa, and another 4 or 5% coming through the Niagara facility. Our real businesses were tenants and facilitators and trying to create an ecosystem, and so we have 180 individual tenants that actually operate from our property. And right now we have about 60 staff with a vision of growing that to around 75 by the end of this year. I mentioned that we're part of the infrastructure, and we went from 18 to 17 when we amalgamated with the Port of Oshawa in 2021. One of the interesting things about us is that we are mandated to be self-sustaining, so we are a for-profit organization. We don't take none of our funding comes from the government unless it's through a special grant like the NTCF program. And Hamilton itself, the Port Authority itself, we generate about in EBITDA around $22 million a year, all of which is reinvested into our assets. And so we pay a small stipend to the federal government, and we pay municipal taxes as any tenant or occupier would do. But the vast majority of our money is reinvested into the infrastructure, and that's how we really make a difference in what we do. I think I've mentioned most of these things, and I think if they're reinvesting in our assets, I'll talk about that a little bit again. And really, that's probably the biggest impact we can have is the investments in that critical infrastructure that we make, and it seems to be the real facilitator. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Now, the activities are dictated by the Canada Marine Act, so there are certain activities that we can't undertake. For example, we're not in a position to create hotels, residential housing, or restaurants in those situations. So very much focused on industrial and manufacturing and logistics and distribution. As you can imagine, our vision when I became CEO about 5 years ago was to create a integrated port network in southern Ontario. And really the goal was to use that network to boost supply chains and build supply chain resilience. And certainly when we looked at what happened during COVID and the challenges we were faced with, you can understand how volatile our supply chains were. And certainly our focus is on how can we develop more marine capacity and use marine to its best capability to both enjoy the environmental improvements and also the this capacity improvements that can come along with it. And as you probably all know, being from Port Colborne, but the actual seaway system itself has about 50% available capacity compared to really when you look at the road and the rail, which is road arguably is running at overcapacity and rail is running at capacity. So we are a real neat opportunity as a relief valve to start to transfer ground transportation onto marine transportation. The $4 billion worth of cargo that we do bring through our facilities, it supports 40,000 jobs in the country. We're actually in Hamilton, we're the third or fourth largest taxpayer and pay about $6 million a year in taxes, in municipal taxes. And the key industries that we're supporting right now, Hamilton and Oshawa for that matter, and to a large extent in Niagara, is really the steel and steelmaking industry is still number one, but the biggest growth area that we've seen is in agriculture, and both the exporting of all of the crops that are produced in Ontario. And about 80% of the crops that are exported, soybeans especially exported out of Ontario, are going through HOPA port facilities. We're also seeing some more opportunities in that area. We're just about to expand in Hamilton and build an enlarged flour mill, which will be the last flour mill to built in Hamilton, or built in Ontario, was about 80 years ago, except for Parrish and Heimbecker, who built one in Hamilton 5 years ago, and then they're going to double the size of it now. The other facility that we've just been working with for almost a decade, and developed them right from their first start, is a sugar facility, and they're going to start to import and refine sugar in Hamilton. And it's something that, again, we're starting to see more and more of an opportunity, and where we see ports now as multimodal industrial hubs is that instead of just the cargo flowing through the port, if we can actually process the cargo there and we can add value to the cargo, then that's where we can really have a large economic impact and support industries and attract other industries in the area. And as I mentioned, steel is still a critical component, although with a lot of it into steel making, and with the change in steel making to electric arc furnaces, we know that market in the traditional way is going to change quite dramatically, and finished steel coming in to support manufacturing. We still can't, and infrastructure. We still can't envision a future where we can produce enough steel in Canada that's actually going to meet demand. So that's always going to be imported into the country, at least in the foreseeable future. As I mentioned, the investments, and that's something that's hugely important to us, and where we feel that we can offer the greatest value. In the last about 7 or 8 years, we've attracted ourselves have put about $100 million in, and our tenants have put about $500 million in, and that's into the infrastructure on our property. So what we've discovered is that for every dollar that we invest, we're able to attract at least $4 and up to $8 from third parties. So it's really got a wonderful multiplier effect, and we've seen some great benefits from that over the years. In the coming years, we and the typical, I guess just this slide shows that the infrastructure that we invest most in is going to be, as you would imagine, buildings, docks, and structures. We also invest heavily, and have done more and more so into rail. And up until a couple of years ago, we actually invested more into rail than we had done into marine, recognizing that we needed to have those multimodal facilities. And I think in Port Colborne, that's something that we really want to work closely with you, is how can we reinstate rail and start to use rail again in the city. In terms of investment, it is split very much similar to what our kind of ownership structure is, where about 80% is invested in Hamilton, and in 2024 we see probably in Niagara about $4 to $5 million being invested into the assets that we've just taken control of in November of last year. So we talked a little bit about some of the supply chain, or talked a little bit about some of the supply chain challenges we've been faced with. And right now our key focus is in how do we take advantage of the capacity inside of the system. Southern Ontario is heading for a population growth of about 10 million over the next 20 years, and that's just going to compound the challenges, which creates great opportunities here in Niagara to attract industry, but also some real opportunities of how can we better utilize the available capacity on the marine side of things in order to start to take some of that congestion off the roads. So really one of our biggest focuses now, and where we think that there's a big opportunity for Niagara, is again taking what today moves by truck and potentially by rail, and moving it in by marine. And the nice thing again about Port Colborne is that it can be a year-round service here, or virtually year-round service for the Northern Lakes, which really is a key selling feature and a real opportunity I think you've got locally. We've done a lot of work and trying to understand what markets work really well, and particularly again in Port Colborne, the data that we've analyzed, and we did a nice project with McMaster and it identified 2.5 million trucks per year between Southern Ontario and the kind of the Chicago and the Midwest area, and that's really interesting because you could service that out of Port Colborne year round, and start to load trucks here as a ferry service or a roll-on service and run it into that area. So it's again, when you think of how many trucks that is and how much relief it can take off of the border crossings, but also trucks off of the road, and the environmental impact is quite phenomenal. So just on that, more specifically on that, for every truck you would take off the road and put it onto a vessel, there's the potential of reducing that greenhouse gas emission by 85%. So it's quite phenomenal. For the rail, it has a positive impact, and you can reduce by about 15 to 25%. But it's really getting the trucks off the road that offers us the biggest opportunity. So all in all, we think that there's the potential for marine actually to take effectively 13 million truck kilometers off the road every week. So it is something definitely worth pursuing. And when we look at where we are today in terms of congestion reaching high levels, and in terms of the real focus on getting to net zero and greenhouse gas emissions, there's probably a better case today than there has been in many years. So that's where we see a big opportunity. In addition to the obvious of trying to work with modal shift to improve the overall supply chain efficiencies and capacities, we also really work with our tenants and our 180 different tenants, and we try to find ways that we can help them to reduce their footprints. We offer them incentives of up to $250,000 to match them with projects to try to invest in their own facilities, and we've invested in things like electric car chargers. We've invested in electric equipment cargo moving equipment. But we've also worked closely, and we're the only spot in all of the Great Lakes, Canada or United States, that actually offers an LNG bunkering service in Hamilton. And every vessel that is fueled with LNG takes about a 30% reduction in the greenhouse gases they emit from their travels. Other things that we've done, which are quite similar to what other organizations have done: EV chargers, solar installations, and energy efficient upgrades. But we're on track to be carbon neutral as a port facility by 2025, which will be one of the first legitimate ones in the country. Getting kind of onto into Niagara, we created a third-party management company called Great Lakes Port Management, specifically around how do we get involved in properties that aren't necessarily part of our letters patent, and start to see those properties to develop and build supply chain capacity. So we do manage third-party properties, and this is how we started out in Niagara, and particularly in Thorold. But also we've bought Jeff Dwar's site here in Port Colborne, and we're starting to work and to develop that one as well. So again, looking at trying to using both all the tools available to us, we're really, as I said, trying to draw together that network in Southern Ontario and just ensure that the cargo is moving over the right spots and take advantage of where there is industrial capacity and the appetite to grow. So you can kind of, when you see the big picture of the map of Southern Ontario, you can kind of see how it all ties together. And in Niagara, our particular focus is helping to develop a hub in Thorold and in Port Colborne, and having two of those multimodal industrial hubs. So I mentioned Thorold was our first stab at things, and we bought a small piece of property there, and now we've also taken over management in partnership with a company called BMI, and we manage now and own over 500 acres of land with 1 million square feet of covered space and warehousing. Hugely successful, and a lot more successful than we had anticipated when we started in 2021, but we still see wonderful potential to continue to grow. And as in Hamilton, we really have virtually no space left, and everything is so expensive to develop now because we're having to move customers around. The opportunity of taking advantage of some of the available industrial space in Niagara makes total sense. Again, we're very proud of our commitment to sustainability, and one of the things that we're excited about is in Thorold, we did win a Brownie Award for the development of the site as one of the best redevelopment, or the best redevelopment site of the year from a brownfield perspective in 2023. So as I mentioned, we are partners with BMI, and right now we have 30 tenants operating on the property from zero in 2021, and there's been over $125 million of investment made on the site, and that's creating 250 full-time equivalent jobs. So again, we didn't know how it was going to turn out. We believe that the climate was right in Niagara, and I know we talked about that. Some of you, I know, Councillor Bruno, you were here, but we talked about that last time I was here, and saying that now the time is right for Niagara to thrive, and certainly what we've seen, the success in Niagara, says that that prediction was quite accurate. So in Port Colborne itself, the yellow section on the east side is the area that was transferred to us, and then the parcel A on the top right is the one that we purchased from Joe F. Dwar. So those are the two pieces of land that we currently, one is part of our letters patent and the 41 acres, and the other one we manage through our third party, or own through our third party company, Great Lakes Port Management. So that was done in the late part of last year. And it kind of comes together, and something that we talked about the last time I was here, but we believe it complements the 175 acres of space for a commercial port and a multimodal hub here in Niagara, or in Port Colborne. Well, there was our ceremony when the land was transferred over late last year. So one of the really exciting projects that we're making some good headway on in the few months that we've had the property is the development of what we're calling the Great Lakes Centre. And that's a partnership with both yourselves, but Niagara College, Brock University, the Seafarers International Union, and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, all of which have now signed MOUs, and we're in a position now to start working on how do we build this sort of, I can't really use the word because the Brock gets wound up about it, but center of excellence, and bring together these companies that will be focused on sustainability in the Great Lakes and education and labor sources. So that would be located most likely in the northern section of the property, and would be a wonderful buffer between the industrial side of things and the interface into the area out to Nickel Beach. And again, it's the vision from one of the previous mayors, Vance Badaway, but we've been able to put together and work very hard at getting some real traction on it. So we think that we're quietly confident that we can probably get this to the finish line. One of the things that's hugely important to us is really we want the communities that we are in, Oshawa, Hamilton, Thorold, and Niagara, to be proud to live in a port city, which I know Port Colborne is. So one of the areas that we're really focused on is making sure that the properties that we have here, particularly that 41 acres, there's a very good interface between the current residential and the recreational area, and where we would put the development side of it in. So we've had a few conversations on that already, on giving up some of that 3-acre parcel to dedicate towards a berming and to block out the side, and also some sidewalks through there. So we're quite committed to seeing those conversations go through. We are, as I mentioned, we very much like to work with you on the rail connection, and think there's a big opportunity to bring rail and connect rail and marine on the property again. And again, we want to work very closely with everybody to ensure that what we're doing on the site is aligned with your vision as much as possible, and we have compatible uses with what your overall plan is for the city as well. Again, we've done a lot to support, starting to support initiatives in Niagara with working with the Hotel de Shaver group in their Celebrity Cup. We always participate and enjoy very much Port Days down here, the Niagara Rowing Championships, and we'll be sponsoring the Special Olympics hockey tournament that'll be coming up in the next few months as well. And again, it's all part of our key values, but really where our focus overall and the driving, I guess the northern light for myself is that for 2024 is building supply chain sustainability. really working hard on climate and energy and trying to figure out how we can facilitate the transition that's going on now, digitization and taking full advantage of the world that's evolving, so that we can start to understand how can we use data to improve supply chains, take trucks off the road, and minimize the environmental impact. And then we continue to grow, so that's why we're moving from 60 to 75 people, but we really want to ensure that in Niagara we build a team, but we build a sustainably great team, something that's here for the next 100 years. Anyways, that's what I wanted to share with you, and we're delighted to be here in Port Colborne, and we've had a great relationship with many of you in the room. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thanks Ian, appreciate it. I'm going to start with my left, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ian. If we look at the page 20, I guess, the very south end of Port where you... Yeah, read. You had it.
Oh.
I'm a visual guy, so that's better than colors on the screen. So you control right down to the end there pretty much? Or
yeah.
At least getting to the end?
Yeah, that's
good.
So the yellow portion is what we control.
Yeah.
The green portion is still owned by, and actually the yellow is owned by Transport Canada as well, but the green portion is owned by Transport Canada. And I think we have Allied Marine inside of there as well. So
right. Okay, so something we desperately need in Port is a fishing pier, or an area to fish. Now the canal's all fenced off, and we can't do anything there. So in all of our plans, and this may have been talked about already, but don't do anything to screw up the end down there with, we appreciate industry and everything, but there's got to be a way that we can get down to there and possibly negotiate something for a fishing pier. So just wanted to put that on your radar.
yeah, well, certainly, as I mentioned, we very much want that interface between the port facilities and the community. So along the east side, that would be more than likely some form of berm, which could also offer some form of pathway or something to get down to the end. Thank you.
And that actually comes from when we served as councillors, when Vance was mayor. So that is a vision and has been a vision of the working group through numerous meetings with this property, with Transport Canada, now going to HOPA with Ian's group. Yeah, so that's something that Gary's department will be working on with HOPA on this. So. Councillor Hoyle?
Hi, one thing through the mayor, residents along there on Welland Street, they noticed that it's a lot cleaner than it's ever been. They can see, so I take it that's the first initial stage is to clean up the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that building is gone now.
The building, new fence, and then all the brush is gone basically, and a new pad, or a cleaned off pad, I should say. As you move along and new stuff comes in, you'll be at least giving us a heads up on council. Only because at the end of the day, we're going to start getting phone calls, so I can, as it were to councilor, they'll contact me and ask what if, what's this, all that good stuff. So if I can have answers for them when you get to that stage.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a formal process that we would go through an environmental, a federally regulated environmental, but there's also the informal process. And with all of our communities, we try our best to be open and transparent and have regular meetings and explain what our plans are and those types of things. So.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I noticed that rail line, and even though there's no rail lines there anymore, I mean, maybe there's one buried, I think. That's what Steve told me. So that should be interesting.
It is, and it's a very unique opportunity because there's actually no rail in all of Niagara, which is on a dock wall. So this would be the only interface between a direct interface between rail and marine. So I think we have some plans in Thorold, but right now there's nothing. So I think it's a great opportunity. And as I mentioned, in Hamilton, we invested more in marine than we did in rail than we did in marine for many, many years, quite simply because we discovered that customers wanted modal choice and wanted to be able to ship by marine when it made sense and rail when it made sense, and obviously trucks would, which in our industry, everything usually touches a truck at some stage, which it has to get to the final destination. But the right modal mix really has advantages.
Yeah, for me in all this is that it's nice to see port as actually a port once again. That's the goal, right? So just land just sitting there. Mm-hmm. Thanks. That's all.
Thanks, Councilman. Just to take your questions and comments a bit further. So with regards to the picture that you're seeing now, the northerly part of that green, there's city-owned property there. Allied Marine owns their property, even though the green is shown as part of Transport Canada lands. So there are two technically non-Transport Canada land holders. The purple is under control of Port Colborne Marine Terminals through Kenny Snyder and his sister Heather and their family company that works there. So there's been lots of discussion with those dock users, with Allied, with us, with our small piece of property, and also with Transport Canada, and then now with HOPA. Because we talked about one time, and I know Ken Snyder's asked us a number of times, is that to get trucks off of Welland Street is to put a truck road through in that would actually feed down to the green and the yellow where HOPA is at the bottom, as opposed to bringing them through Welland Street. So getting them off, so they come off Clarence through the property. That's how trucks came and went in the past. A long time ago, before Ian and I were here. Well, we were here, but we were pretty small. So those are, again, discussions that's been talked about over the history of this property. So again, with Gary's department and with HOPA, those are, I'm sure, things that'll be at the table.
Yeah, thanks. And Mayor Steele, you're right. This is mislabeled inside of here because that purple section does say HOPA managed, and in reality, that's we're working in partnership with QSL and Snyder Docks. It's not really our management of that. So.
Yeah, but there is lots of discussions going on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, Councillor Bruno.
Thank you. I really share the concern of Councillor Bodner. That would be a great thing, Ian, if you could get something down there, because I know I talked to the fishing community, to Erie Tracker, and since they started to fence seaway lands, right, there is really no place for what we used to enjoy as a kid, where you learned how to fish without having to have a boat or a parent who had a boat. And I know there was lots of people coming to port. They're all now, according to a local fish shop, going to Port Maitland, where there's a pier and that kind of stuff. So that would be unique. In the past, for Councillor Hoyle and Councillor Aquilina, who are new here, during the early days of you setting up shop here, I expressed some specific concerns about truck traffic, Welland Street, things like that, stuff that's laid down on the dock there that could blow over to the east side neighborhood as well as the west side. So I've been really impressed with what you've done down in Thorold. Super impressed. And I publicly have been stating, I'd love to see Highway 140 loaded with industry and producing and leaving on Highway 140 and exiting Port Colborne. My biggest concern is the area in yellow and what goes there. I was really intrigued by the sentence you used when you talked about in consultation with the community as to what would go in there. I mean, certainly nobody would, I'd be elated if you get the, Waterway Center there and the Seafarers Union and all of those kinds of things. In your slide presentation, you talked about how, shipping does take thousands of trucks off the road and thousands of CO2 kilograms. It also can put thousands of trucks on the road if things are unloaded in that area along the spit and are trucked out of Port Colborne down Welland Street. And And so, as that partner and responsible steward, I mean, I look to a scenario like this is, you may get, especially with all the docks that you manage, you're going to be faced with the choice of potentially a customer wanting waterfront or dockage, and it may be lay down, which is stuff outside that potentially can blow or migrate, versus stuff inside. You'll be faced with stuff that, I mean, my perfect world is, a 1,000-footer comes in and what you take off of that is processed right nearby, and it's so intensive input, but its output goes out in 25 trucks because it's a precious thing that ultimately it does. So in the spirit of you being the gatekeeper, HOPA, as to who goes there, when you're approached as a business opportunity, I would hope that you could keep in mind that I would even settle for the fact if from the spit the trucks went to Snyder's, crossed in front of the Clarence Street Bridge, it could somehow get out to Welland Street where it's not going by homes, it's not going by a trail, it's those pollutants aren't next to houses. And we want to fix up Welland Street to get to a crown jewel that's Nickel Beach. The last thing I want to see is a 1,000-footer come in and it offloads and is transshipped on 750 trucks. I don't think that works for the east side. I don't think it works for Port Colborne and the road along that way. But as the gatekeeper, you can pick and choose what's going in there. And I would hope that that choice is what you said in your presentation, that you would work with the community. I mean, do I like rail over trucks? Yes. Do I want a 50-foot train going across where I can't get to the Clarence Street Bridge, or people from that south end getting even to the Mill Bridge because of the way? So there is a way to do this, and there is a way to just be capitalistic about it and do it because you don't have other space and a client's begging for space. As long as that responsible stewardship and works with the city, because my biggest fear is that maybe you're not there, and in the future, and what we've all learned is land use planning is just that. The players that promise something one day aren't necessarily the players that are there next week or next year or 5 years from there. So if you can get things that do added value and come in on a ship but leave in 20 trucks or whatever, but if it's a transshipment place where Welland Avenue, the whole length of the way, is just beaten up and Port Colborne taxpayers pay for it, I don't think that's what anybody in Port Colborne wants, east side or west side. So I leave you with that. I'll watch intently, and hopefully it goes that way. And I think you'll make everybody happy in this community. I have that concern for that land and what exits there and how it does. So with that, thank you for the presentation. And Godspeed to make it good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think just to to talk a little bit about what you brought up, we are generally sincere, and hopefully it outlasts myself and outlasts Larissa's with us as well. She runs our kind of that file on the government relations and public relations side of things and community relations. But we are generally sincere that we want our communities to be proud to live in port cities, and that means that we do reach out and we do work very closely with communities and try to be aligned as much as possible. Is there ever going to be disagreements? Yes, of course there is. That's just normal. But one thing that we would point to is that the port and the city relationship in Oshawa was absolutely terrible for decades and decades. And you could, Bill, you could reach out, you could reach out to the mayor there, Dan Carter, and he can tell you how transformative it is and how much we've been supportive and working with the community since we amalgamated with them. And again, the proof will be in the pudding in 5 years. Hopefully you say, yes, you delivered on what you promised.
Did that.
Actually,
we spoke at a function and we got talking about it, so he knows, he obviously knows what your plans are for Niagara. Yeah, those were comments, and also from a couple of his counselors that I met at another few functions, we talked about it and how great it's been. What a change. That was the exact words, what a change. So that is good news for us. So. Questions, Councillor Borgard?
Through your worship.
Thank you.
I like my co-councilors, I do have just some concerns in particular to potential traffic, whether it be vehicular, rail, as well as boat. So typically, it sounds like with HOPA, there could be increased marine traffic, rail traffic, and truck traffic. And currently residents on the east side have difficulty getting over to the west side when the bridge is up. Never mind if there's going to be a long rail, a long train and potential truck traffic that's coming in. And there's some residents, particularly those that live in the neighborhood beside the lands that you purchase, who don't have vehicles and can't easily just go to the next bridge to get across, or they have to walk. And I get calls from these individuals sometimes. What can be done to sort of help those people be able to navigate, I guess, an increased traffic situation that sounds like we might be dealing with?
Yeah, and you're right. If we're doing our job well, there will be more trucks and there will be trains and there will be more vessels. That's what we hope to achieve, but we hope to do it in a way that integrates well with the community. So what we started to pilot in Hamilton is really using A-tree data and using various other data sources to understand the truck flows. And we're also creating different staging yards so that we can keep the trucks on our property as long as possible, so that they're not blocking the roads. So that's one of the big initiatives. How do we use data to ensure that trucks are being utilized? Because in reality, and this is a bit off topic, but about 50% of all transportation in Canada is empty. So when you look around at rail and you look around at trucks and you look around at vessels, 50% of those that capacity is available when it's moving around on the roads. If we can start to use data, so in Councillor Bruno's example, if we can start to use the right data systems and match loads, then we can dramatically reduce the number of truckloads attached with each piece of cargo. We can drop something off and pick something up. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking at now. How do we create staging yards? How do we use data to minimize the impact on communities for the flows? The other piece is, how do we use data to minimize the idle time for trucks? And that's one of the other things we're looking at very closely, so that if a truck is coming in and idling in a yard for 15 minutes, is producing a lot of greenhouse gases, how do we have them so that they're held off-site and only brought in at the last minute, so you minimize that type of thing? So yes, it's going to be work that has to be done, and there's challenges along with it, but that's the way we're looking at it and trying to address it. And Hamilton, with 500,000 trucks per year, is a great spot for us to test some of this information and some of these systems out.
Just through you. Just one thing I wanted to add is the reason why it's such a big deal for those particular residents is the grocery stores are all on the west side, so in order to get there, they have to cross the bridge and what potentially could be rail and have to deal with the trucks. So it's usually quite difficult for east siders to get to deal with to get to the west side when it involves these transportations that are in the way. One particular
just on that, I would hope. Go ahead. I would hope that the reality of it is we do not. There's no logical reason for a material number of trucks to be crossing that bridge or the rail to be on that bridge. That bridge, the operations that we would be looking at would be vacating in a different direction. So being on the bridge is less likely.
It's not. I'm sorry, not on the bridge. I'm just saying to get across. So like to walk across the bridge, and if there's rail coming down to the lands, I'm assuming that's what we're talking about.
And there is laws in place that limit the number of minutes that a rail can actually block a roadway, and the CN and CP adhere to that. And certainly we see them coming across Burlington Street in Hamilton all the time, and they have to limit the amount of time that intersection is actually blocked.
One last question. So as I said, the lands that you purchased recently are next to residential lands. What sort of impacts can those landowners anticipate from the use of those lands?
Hopefully minimal. And as I mentioned, we really want to work on that interface, and that's the area that's most closest to the residential is the area that we feel that if we can build the Great Lakes Center inside of that space, then that's really going to operate as a block between whatever industrial operations might exist further to the south. So hopefully they're very, very limited.
Okay, further questions? Seeing none? Ian, appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And I
And,
look forward to seeing more of you in the coming years.
Yes, and I'm sure you'll hear from Gary and his department with regards to what council has in mind here and some of the thoughts that have come forward, not just tonight, but in the past with regards to all our port lands in the south end of the property. So we appreciate the update. Thanks. There are no delegations this evening, so on to the mayor's report. So I could not be more proud of our staff who pulled together as a team to make our Top Hat event so successful last Friday morning. The crew from the Parks Department was out there in the dark before 6 a.m. to set up chairs, tables, flags, lights, and to start the bonfire. And we sure needed the fire, believe me, it was cold. It was, a few weeks ago it was 15 and sunny, and this was below zero temperatures Friday morning. But it was nice and sunny. And the snow didn't come till a little bit after we had finished the morning. So the first downbound ship, the Algoma Conveyor, actually went downbound the night before and was upbound when we honored Captain Kemp and his crew, but a bit of a glitch, but we worked with it. The Fair Trade Committee, as I said earlier, was there brewing coffee by 6:30 and setting up tables for pancake, sausage, and real Niagara maple syrup. Our comms team set up our podium and audio video for all the lights, camera, action of the event. Our town crier, Tom Carr, did an excellent job rousing the crowd with history and huzzahs, as you've heard him say. Our museum was there to explain the significance of the 100-year-old top hat, which is kept safely in the museum vault. We presented Captain Kemp with a brand new top hat that he could take with him. It fit him actually perfectly. It's the first time I've seen that with a captain. Captain Kemp signed the museum logbook as first captains of the season have done since our top hat event started more than 50 years ago. Our library was there with souvenir buttons attached to cards outlining the history of the event and the canal. My office is still getting requests for those. Many thanks to ADM, Go Buddha, Villages of Port Colborne, and Amherst Crane for your support and contributions to our breakfast. We welcomed representatives from all levels of government and the Seaway to speak to the importance of the canal for the past 195 years and the 65th anniversary of the St. Lawrence Seaway. Greg Rule was here. He's the president and CEO of Algoma Central Corporation. Greg gave a great speech about the 125th anniversary of Algoma and the Algoma Bear and its possible DNA connection to the Blue Bear of Port Colborne High School. We had guests from Washington, D.C. from the American counterpart of the St. Lawrence Seaway. It was an honor to welcome for the first time to Port Colborne Rebecca Yackley, the Director of Trade and Economic Development and International Trade Specialist, Jasmine Jerkwoods. We had a group of ship junkies who came from as far as Cambridge, Kitchener, and Burlington. We had dozens of Port Colborne people and business partners who braved the cold to join us for breakfast and the celebration to celebrate the day. The blizzard didn't start until the event was over, just as the crews came to tear down. I'll say this, as we have two top hat ceremonies in Niagara, one in St. Catharines at Lock 3 and ours in Lock 8 Gateway Park, we include all the formalities, the traditions, all the pomp and circumstances befitting a historical occasion, but what we have at our celebration is fun. And I said this many times when I went up to St. Catharines End, our event is really fun. There are also top hat ceremonies in Montreal, Thunder Bay, and ship watchers celebrate the first ship under the Thousand Islands Bridge. As I said, I'm so proud of our staff and all the attendees for making it such a great event. Another one for the books team. Thank you for your efforts to make the day so great. And this coming weekend, I can't believe it, but it's Easter already. We wish everyone a healthy, blessed weekend with family and friends. Port Colborne's own tugboat Bunny arrives on the bow of the J.W. Cooper about 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. We hope all the children will bring their parents and friends to the canal along West Street to welcome the friendly fellow with the big ears. For the promenade on West Street, take your children and their Easter baskets to the Valley Health and Wellness Center on Elizabeth Street. For face painting, crafts, Easter egg hunt, all starting at 10 a.m. There's free skating all afternoon, sponsored by Rankin Construction, and free swimming, sponsored by the YMCA. We wish everyone a very happy Easter. Yesterday morning, I drove to Toronto with our CAO Scott Louis and Dr. Matthew Vandenberg to meet with Ontario Health Minister Sylvia Jones. We wanted to make sure she was aware of the work we're doing to improve primary care in Port Colborne when the changes come in 2028. We wanted the minister and her senior staff to support us as we work towards solutions to our healthcare challenges. We impressed upon her the collaborative efforts we're making and that we need her and her team to help our team maintain and enhance access to primary care in Port Colborne. Councillors, if you can all don your protective glasses. Can everybody put their protective glasses on? This is needed for effect. I won't put mine on quite yet because you can't see a darn thing through them, which is actually why they're there. But if you guys can all put them on. Can't see anything. It's less than 2 weeks away from the celestial event of a lifetime. You may have heard there is a total eclipse of the sun starting at 2 p.m. Monday, April the 8th. Totality occurs at 3:18 p.m. We expect a few people to show up in Port Colborne, well, maybe a few thousand, as we're on the direct path of the total eclipse. And quite frankly, we won't have the pesky mist from the falls to impede our view. We have a full day of events planned. Please refer to the city website, portcolborne.ca, for all the times and venues. There will be some road closures, some detours and parking restrictions at H.H. Knoll Park and along Sugarloaf Street as we anticipate an increased volume of traffic. The boat ramp will be closed that day. Signs are already posted down at the marina. Emergency response teams from across the region, including our own, have been planning for this day for the past year. It will be all hands on deck for all city staff. City Hall will be open, but we will have limited services that day as staff may be deployed away from their regular posts. Our customer service staff at reception have been inundated with requests for the special eclipse glasses, as you can see on our counselors right here. If you don't have yours, please get them soon. Our glasses are for Port Colborne residents, and we're getting requests from people from neighboring towns and cities. All you have to do is show your Participate Pass or your library card, and you'll get your glasses, maximum of 5 per family, until they run out. I think we're down to the last few hundred pairs. Our museum blacksmith, Dr. Brian Pihak, also happens to be an astronomer. He is a former president of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Dr. Pihak will speak about the eclipse at a special lecture in the L.R. Wilson Archives, April the 3rd. Please register because space is limited. As my last item this evening, I will share some personal happy news. Deb and I are grandparents. My son Mitchell and daughter-in-law and our daughter-in-law Liz are first-time parents of Oliver William Scott Steele, born yesterday at 1:28 p.m., weighing in at 7 pounds 10 ounces. Mom and baby are doing great, named for his great aunt Olive, and he looks just like his great-grandfather Chuck. So happy news for my wife and I and our whole family. Now, there is no regional councillor's report. Is there any questions for the regional councillor? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, councillor.
This is just to the mayor's report.
Yes?
You never look so good, Mr. Mayor.
I know, eh? So, with that, before we go on to staff remarks and councillors' remarks and our consideration, we need all councillors out front for a photograph. Staff wants a photo of all of us, so if we can go in front of the wheel here, we'll do that. All right, thank you, Council. That was a good picture. I'm sure that'll get out on our social media posts right away with regards to people getting in, and even though they may, some may be late, that the glasses may be gone, but we hope there's enough for everybody to go around. But in saying that, lots of businesses in town have them for sale, so if you don't get yours at City Hall, please support our local businesses with your Eclipse glasses. So we're on to staff remarks. I'm going to start with Acting CAO, Mr. Long. You want to start us off?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Steele. Good evening, Council. A couple things. Our CAO, Scott Louie, asked me to introduce Carol Schofield, who is with us this evening, sitting with senior staff. Carol will be serving as acting city clerk for the next several months until Charlotte Madden returns from her mat leave. Carol served as city clerk and manager of legislative services for the town of Fort Erie for many years, and I believe she is a law clerk by trade. So great to have you with us, Carol. And I guess on a related note, I wanted to mention that and I think it's well known by now that this is Sima Tufale's last Port Colborne Council meeting. Sima has been with the city's clerk division for over 2 years and has filled in for both the deputy clerk position as well as the city clerk position when those positions were vacant. Sima has accepted a position with the region of Peel, which is a great opportunity for her, and we're really happy for her because of that, and it's also a chance for her to be a bit closer to family. And I just wanted to say on behalf of the city's CAO, the corporate leadership team, and city staff, just wanted to say thank you, Sima. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you for your hard work and enthusiasm and the positive attitude that you bring every day to work. Thank you for your, I would say, commitment to good governance, and thank you for being an integral part of daily operations and the administration here at the city. It's been a real pleasure working with you. We're really happy for you in this opportunity, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, Gary. I was hoping not to cry tonight, but I truly appreciate that. Those are definitely kind words. It's been an absolute pleasure to have been part of the Port Colborne family, and I'm definitely going to cherish, these moments, and yeah, truly appreciate being able to work with everyone here. So, thank you.
Keep going.
Thank you, Sima. Just two other things, if I may. Just wanted to touch on the recent provincial announcements that are important for municipalities. So last week, the province announced several funding programs to assist municipalities in creating more housing supply and assisting with funding to help with the infrastructure that's required to build new homes. So I just wanted to mention to council that staff are focused on 3 programs. One is the Building Faster Fund, and I can say that we are just waiting for the application details to be announced, and we will be submitting an application. The next one is the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. We have met, we are working on an application, and we will be submitting an application by the deadline of April 19th. And the province announced last week and reaffirmed the funding again today in today's budget. It's a new municipal housing infrastructure program. The application details will be announced later this year, and when they are, we will certainly be pursuing that. So I just wanted to advise council on behalf of our CAO and our leadership team that senior staff have met regarding these funding opportunities, and we will be actively and aggressively pursuing them once we have more details. And then finally, I just wanted to share my time with my colleague, Mr. Greg Higginbotham, our tourism coordinator, who has a tourism update. Thank you.
Good evening, Council, through the Mayor to Council. We're about a month away now from the start of the 2024 Great Lakes cruising season, and I wanted to take an opportunity tonight to just spend a couple minutes to update Council on what we expect will be another successful season here in Port Colborne. So we have 54 stops in total, a little bit of a decline from previous years, but still headed very much in the right direction. So we're very happy to be one of very, very few ports in the Great Lakes that enjoys a significant number of stops throughout the Great Lakes cruising season. So our first cruise ship to kick off the 2024 season will be Vikings Octantis on April 26th. We have the cruise ship, the entire schedule of stops on the city's website, and that is for the public, it's very simple. It's portcolborne.ca/cruise ships. They'll find some information about the Great Lakes cruising, Port Colborne's role in Great Lakes cruising as a port of call, and you'll also find a link there to the schedule. So from there, I think another pretty important update to provide to Council is that this year we've had some really good reception from the cruise lines about doing some excursions in Port Colborne. So we have one that we're very excited to introduce, which will be in partnership with the Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum, and that's to offer a walking tour followed by a wine tasting. And so we are just finalizing all the details on that, and we will be offering that tour for Vikings' first call to Port Colborne on April 26th, and continuing to offer that tour over 26 dates throughout the course of the season. Some other updates to provide are that we are working with the Seaway and project partners to introduce docking on the west side at Wharf 18-1. So things have been progressing nicely with that, and due to the length and depth of that wharf, we will see smaller cruise ships dock there. One that has been confirmed is the Pearl Mist. The other cruise ships are just a little bit too large for that dock, but I think it's a very successful development in Port Colborne that we will see some cruise ships dock on the west side. From there, we're also working with the dock operator at Port Colborne Marine Terminals and their security company on taking some of the feedback that we've received from Viking and other cruise lines about how we can continue to make preparations for a really good guest experience. And we've kept that top of mind over the last two seasons, and it's going to be very much of importance to us going forward into this new 2024 season. And as I often do, and I've made it a sort of a regular occurrence of mine, where I meet with the BIA, the downtown BIA, but also the Main Street BIA in advance of the cruise season to provide them with some updates, to pass some information on that I've received, and excited to also be working with both BIAs on a joint project through Economic Development and Tourism to try to drive some more foot traffic from passengers and crew of the cruise ships to the doorsteps of their businesses. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if Council has some.
Just before I go to you, Councilor Bruno, just on our numbers, guys, the unfortunate part about it is American Queen has gone out of business. They were in bankruptcy protection in the United States. So stops across the Great Lakes will be down this year because their two ships are gone. However, speaking with a number of other cruise lines, when I was in Washington, I met a gentleman from American Cruise Lines. Got to keep the name straight. American Cruise Lines, and I passed his information to Greg to speak with. We also know that our Cruise Association is speaking with a number of ship owners that are building ships that will be able to traverse the Great Lakes. So they are starting to build the smaller ships. So hopefully within the next couple of years we see it ramped up again, because new ventures are going to come that are in the cruise industry will be coming into the Great Lakes for the first time. So this isn't a Port Colborne anomaly, it's a Great Lakes anomaly, but it's because one company has gone out of business. So, Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is probably to Greg and to you, Mr. Mayor. Like I've been sitting around here for the most part since 1994. I've lived here mostly all my life, and I've heard so many promises and pseudo promises from the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority. There wouldn't be enough room on this dais to line them up. For me, it's defer, delay, deny. And so, you know, they've told you they're working on it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Come across the Jackknife Bridge today, looks like hell. The building that's there, that was the old lift bridge thing, peeling boards on it. I mean, like, I don't know if the mayor or you can enlighten me and this community, but like the simplest of things, a coat of paint, I mean, like, it's just been years and years and years. And last year, we were promised that, some of them are going to be able to dock on the west side. And this year, you're coming in March, and the first ship's coming in April, and they're talking to us about getting these smaller ships. Well, they run out of talk time with me. So I don't know if either of you can add or enlighten things that I haven't heard before all my life.
I mean, I think Greg's confirmed that they will be docking on the west side this year. That has now been 100% confirmed. However, Greg will not know about the other things you talk about, but Mr. Shapelsky will. So in my meetings with the president, vice president, and the Niagara representatives for the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority when I was at Marine Club in Toronto back in January, we had a 2-hour meeting, which went very well. And out of that, Steve has been in conversation with them with regards to how their properties will look. We're looking at partnerships where we may be going in and doing work that they'll pay for. So the only thing that we agreed on is that if we want a better standard, we'll do that because that's what we want. However, they'll pay us at least up to their standard. So there might be something that we're paying for, but it's because we want it to look very similar to how we treat our own parks and our own property. So that is ongoing, and the next step we'll be talking about conditions of structures, fencing, and things like that. But we wanted to at least get Steve started on the grass cutting because being a warm winter, we know those areas will get long pretty quick in the next month or so. So at least those can be done. But Steve and I will work with our local Seaway guys to make sure that now. I'll probably say this, it won't be us painting things, but we will drive that they will be painted this year. So if you could leave that with Steve and I and his staff, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. I remain optimistic. Truth is in the pudding.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you. Any further questions to Greg? Councillor Aquilina.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Greg. I'm very pleased to hear that not just the crew is offloading and going to some of the restaurants, and that you have plans in place to have tours for some of the passengers of the ship. So any increase in that, I think, is a positive for Port Colborne.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Aquilina. Yes, it's been something that we remain persistent about, the same way in which we remain persistent about some of the things that we'd like to see when we're having discussions with the Seaway. I think with Port Colborne, we're in a little bit of a unique circumstance in that what we have to offer has to be customized, and we've done some of the hard work of customizing things like this, or bringing back things like this historical walking tour. And every year I look forward to debriefing with the cruise lines after the season, find where there are certain things that other ports aren't doing that Port Colborne can do, and offering that up as a customized excursion or tour experience. And I'm very, very happy that Viking and a couple other cruise lines, which we're still finalizing the details on, are coming around to learning more about Port Colborne and what Port Colborne has to offer. It's very easy, of course, to go to Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake because the cruise lines know about what those destinations have to offer, and I'm just very appreciative of them that they're willing to work with us to develop some more experiential opportunities here in Port Colborne that we can then turn around and use to showcase our community.
Yep, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, back to Greg. And I'm not sure about this answer, but with Port Dover, is there any sort of cruise lines that get off there? Or the only reason I'm asking is just because of the lighthouse has the sister company in Port Dover, and so my question is if they have something maybe set up with the lighthouse in Port Dover, like it would be beneficial if Lighthouse in Port Colborne could do the same sort of thing for these passengers.
No, I think I understand your question, Councillor, and through the mayor to you. That has been, I think, one of the first most promising opportunities that we first introduced to the cruise lines is that we have an amazing theater company here in Lighthouse Theater, and the cruise ships do not stop in Port Dover, which is good for us, maybe not so great for Port Dover, but the only thing that I think I don't see it really as an issue. It's just a barrier that we're up against, is that the cruise lines also have a lot of entertainment on board, and so we're also looking to carve out a place where whether it's sort of an afternoon show or an evening show, where in large numbers we would see passengers disembark the ship and go to Roselawn and enjoy a nice show put on by Lighthouse Theater.
Anything further? Thanks, Greg. All set here?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Clerk's office, anything to add? Steve?
Yes, through your worship. A number of operational programs have begun, including the annual ditching program, sidewalk and curb program, and even our street sweeping program, I should say. Our asphalt patching and resurfacing programs and our line painting program is also slated to start at the end of April too. So we are ahead of the game on a number of our programs, which is great. Also to note is that our utilities team was able to locate a leaking water service and repair it in short manner just yesterday in Ward 1. So this is one of 12 locations on our water distribution system that have already been found through proactive leak detection so far this year, which is great. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Brian?
Yeah, through yourself, Mayor, to Council, just two quick updates. I'll just reiterate what you said earlier with respect to the glasses. If people are interested in glasses, please do reach out soon because they are going fast. And the second one is just for Council, and I think Council's noted, but the TVs are up and running, and we've had a lot of discussion recently at Council with respect to that, the Health and Wellness Center. We look forward to comments with respect to programming and thank the Communications Department for doing such a great job with the eclipse and the events coming up for Easter.
Thank you, Brian. Councillor's remarks. Councillor Aquilina.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a question for Director Schabowski. In the Seniors Committee advisory group that I belong to, there was a question in regards to West Street sidewalks. Are they part of your sidewalk repair, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The West Street sidewalk, as part of the hydro relocation work that we're doing, there will be, depending on the type of services and details included in the electrical work, some of the sidewalks may be replaced at that time. And there is a plan to address, I believe, the portion of the hydro works that are being done.
Thank you. A few weeks ago, I brought up that Vance Badaway's staff shared income tax site. So I just wanted to highlight that the dates are now finalized, and so it's been reposted, and it's been reposted for the Seniors Advisory Facebook page as well. The other item is Shirkston Community Center is having an Easter egg hunt on Saturday, starting at 10, so I'd like to invite everybody there. And I would like to congratulate the mayor being a grandfather, so congratulations to that. And also to congratulate Saima on her new adventure in Peel region, and similar to when Nicole Ruby was the acting clerk, you both were the two, along with Diana, when I first started, and so I just wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beauregard? You're good. Councillor Baggio? Councillor Bruno?
Yes, one item, but just also to Simon. We're going to miss you. Wish that husband of yours would have moved down this way, so you could. But yeah, it's been a real delight to have you there. Thank you for all your assistance. It's our loss, certainly. I just had one question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Shapowski. Steve, I did receive a call, but I've noticed it for a while. West Side Road, between the whole area that was repaved between Barrack and Highway 3 on West Side Road. If you look on both sides, this many months after, there's still a half a dozen about on each side, these signs about high tension wires posted on various poles that say careful wires crossing, I'm assuming for dump trucks and things like that. They never got taken down, and I just, whether that's Brennan or whomever, one resident's had it in front of his house for all these months and was wondering if something still was going to happen there where they need to be up. So if you could look into that.
Yep. Through your worship, we'll follow up with that and we'll take care of it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hoyle?
Just wish Simon good luck on future endeavors. We'll miss you, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. On to consideration of items requiring separate discussion. So under staff reports, we have one. Item 8.5 is Lockview Park. The recommendation is that Public Works Department Report 2024-73 be received. The council pre-commit $395,000 from the 2025 capital and related projects budget for the Lockview Park project. The council allocate $204,000 from the Canadian Community Building Fund for the Lockview Park project. And the council allocate the remaining $1,000 from the capital budget under over reserve for the Lockview Park project. Questions to this? Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. I had lifted that, but my questions have been answered during the day by email and seeing other councillors' comments and by Steve directly, so I withdraw that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baggio?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions have also been answered by email regarding the property lines with the high school, and so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoyle?
All my questions were already answered, but I also want to thank that this is finally getting done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Further questions? Councillor Beauregard?
Yeah, through your worship, I just want to say the same thing as Councillor Hoyle. I'm just happy that this is going through and this is going to get done this year. So, well, not completed, but at least started. So I look forward to it. And I believe the residents do too.
Great. Seeing no questions, if I could have Councillors Hoyle and Beauregard move this. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Now we go to correspondence items. We have item 9.2. It's a letter that I received in my office with regards to a meeting I had with the Minister of Transport, Pablo Rodriguez. Councillor Bruno, you had a question to this?
Yes, Your Worship. In that report, it states that the St. Lawrence Seaway has done this agreement and some of the divestitures have happened, but it is very vague on a line that says there's potentially a revestiture of land. And I don't know if you could find out if that need for the Seaway to either secure new lands or take lands that were on the list back if they are in the boundaries of Port Colborne.
Certainly, through my office and Mr. Long's office, we can do that. The 10 parcels that we've asked to acquire, quite frankly, had nothing to do with the canal. I think one of them was actually like a kilometer away. It was probably an old warehouse or house or whatever it was when the canal was originally built, before the Seaway even came in the 50s. So this goes back to probably the 1800s to the 30s when they did the expansion, a lot of this stuff. So we believe that the 10 that we want, the majority of them can be used for housing of all sorts. So I made sure that the minister knew that with regards to those properties. So we'll certainly be moving forward with that. And now that we've received the letter from the minister, to go back to the Seaway and say, okay, guys, it's time to move on these 10 that we've asked for. And then we'll also at the same time ask for an update with regards to, is there any Port Colborne lands that you thought about divesting, but now you're pulling those back? I don't believe there is. I think anything that was there that literally is on the canal, they're already working with other investors or with our office to do something with. So, okay. All right. Any further questions on that? So this is just to receive, council. We're just receiving the letter. So if I could have Councillor Bruno and Baggy move that we receive this letter. All in favor? That's carried. The next one's 9.8. I asked Councillor Bruno to move bring up 9.8. It's a letter from the town of Bracebridge, and it was a resolution of support regarding request to the province of Ontario for new provincial municipal fiscal framework. It is there in front of you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I asked Councillor Bruno to bring this forward to support this, and that we let not only the government officials on the list that Bracebridge put in, but we would also include our local MPPs on this. So if I could have Councillor Bruno and Councillor Beauregard move that we support this letter. Are there any questions or changes if you've had a chance to read it on this? I think it was well written. I don't think there really is any changes to make. So, okay. Councillors, you're fine to move that? All those in favor? That's carried. So the new Madam Clerk will help us forward that to Bracebridge and all the pertaining names on that list, as well as our 4 MPPs within the Niagara region. Okay. Man, oh man, how much time more can we take, guys? You guys are early tonight. There is one motion this evening, Council. This was from my notice of motion of last meeting. And it's a letter going to the Governor of Illinois with regards to the COPE, which were formerly called Asian carp, from the Illinois River and the Mississippi watershed and basin, that we want to make sure that these don't get into our ecosystem, and we want the Governor to sign off on all the funds that have been given for this project. They're all there. The Army Corps of Engineers is going to move forward with it. So what I'm requesting here is the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne support the attached letter, and that the City of Port Colborne forward this letter to the Governor of Illinois. If I could have Councillors Bodner and Hoyle move that. Any questions to that? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Council. We haven't been given any notice, but are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. We have bylaws. If I could have Councillors Aquilina and Bagu move bylaws 20.1 and 20.2. Questions? All in favor? Those are carried. Just before we go, Sima, as most council said here tonight, and I'm sure I can say this for all of staff and what Mr. Long, our acting CAO this evening, but our Director of Special Projects, Economic Development and Tourism, has already stated we thank you for your time here, and we truly understand why you want to be in Brampton, because you're fairly newly married, and you know it's a little tough traveling all the way here, where now you can go 10-15 minutes from your house with Peel Region. So we wish you the best of luck in the future, and I'm sure we'll run into each other at some point along the way with different events that we go to. But truly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much. So with that, council, this meeting is adjourned.